Welcome to our Common Sense channel. And today's topic is Black Americans, Hidden and Dangerous Racism. Now, Devin Morgan, who is a writer and researcher, will now share some information and a simple idea of how we can tackle this problem. So, greetings, Brother Devin.
Greetings, Brother Tarka.
Yeah, by the way, Brother Devin, how could we get hold of your books?
Okay, the books are available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, or they can people can contact me directly through the email and in the description.
Okay, that's great. So, Brother Devin, what are your views on the nature of the racism our brothers and sisters are experiencing in America?
Without a doubt, Black Americans has and are experiencing the worst aspect of racism than any of us. Malcolm has said it best. I don't see an American dream. I see an American nightmare. The George Floyd murder was the most demonstrable of the lethal aspect of the racism they are experiencing in America. This is a demonstration that they are killed and brutalized on a regular basis for racial reasons.
But there's nothing hidden about these examples.
Well, yes and no. The way George Floyd was murdered had a hidden and chilling message in it. Or should we interpret the fact that the policeman was willing to kneel on his neck for 8 minutes and did not care that he was being recorded?
I think most of us would have interpreted as him being evil. So what other hidden messages did you get from this?
The message loud and clear was the system of racism in America is so bad that he was super confident that there were 12 jurors that he didn't know, never met, and an entire legal system that would not convict him regardless of the evidence. And there is some talk suggesting that if it wasn't for the worldwide protest, he would have gotten away with it, because we've seen many instances of people being caught on video killing Black people and they get off. No, not guilty.
That makes sense. Come to think of it, people don't normally commit murder while being recorded. So, what other examples of the hidden aspects of racism that's affecting Black Americans can you highlight?
This example comes from the story about the positive impact hip-hop was having on Black youths and how they weaponize it against them. Here is a brother explaining what happened in this video.
Hip-hop changing from positive to negative was not a consequence of history. It was not a circumstance of history. It was nothing that just happened on its own. It had nothing to do with the changing of the times. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with the fact that there are people in this particular society who wants to see us exactly where we are. And we cannot let that point elude us. These are the facts. How do we know? 1967, Kerner Commission report on urban disorder. When Black people said, yo, we're tired of this system. You know what I mean? This system is oppressing us. So we rebelled against the system. We burned things. We said, yo, we had enough. He did his little report on what caused these riots. He said, what caused these riots? He said it was young children who started these riots, and what was motivating them was a high self-esteem and an enhanced racial pride. He said the majority of the rioters were high school dropouts, but they had a higher political orientation than their peers who did not drop out. And they saw the system as their enemy, so they attacked it in the right circumstance. So, fast forward to 1992. Same thing. Number one record on the radio, we had Fight the Power. Fight the Power is on the radio. Rodney King is beaten before the world. The Black youth rebelled against the system. Again, they did it again. And why? What primed them? Positive hip hop. Primed them. Fight the Power. X-Clan. Brand Nubian. You had these groups out here who were pushing, who were politically orienting black kids in the right direction, giving them the proper prompters that they needed so that they can respond properly to oppression. Alright? In 1967, when the riots happened, he saw that the self-esteem and the racial pride was fueling this. So he said, how do I bring that down so that they will not riot? And what he did, he flooded the airways with black exploitation movies. Nigga Charlie and the Return of Nigga Charlie. These were movies. Hip-hop didn't start calling people niggas. We had Shav. We had Coffee. Black girl turned prostitute to do whatever, you know what I mean? But these black exploitation movies brought down the self-esteem and the racial pride so that the kids will not rebel against the system of oppression. 92, the racial pride was back in effect. We had black kids going to Dr. Ben Yuckinen lectures. We were spending our money to go see Farrakhan speak as opposed to going to a strip club. This is where we were. The most coveted article of clothing was a historically black college or university sweater. We were motivating children towards positive attitudes and lifestyles. And when Rodney King got the beating, heads responded properly. Fast forward to our day. Sean Bell is shot 50 times in the street in New York by police officers. Number one song on the radio, Like a Lollipop. Nobody do nothing. Nobody responds to nothing. Trust me. Trust me. Just like the brother, I believe it was JT, the bigger figure, who said that the label executives came to him and said, yo brother, we need you talking about guns and whores. Right. You know what I mean? That's right. That happens. I've been in those meetings with management and had to ask me, is what you're saying really what you believe? So that we'll know how to market you properly. You know what I mean? This happens. Young Buck on his album, he has a song on his album that talks about police terrorism. The label said absolutely not. Jimmy Iovine said absolutely not. You cannot put that record on the album because it might create an atmosphere that might put police officers' lives in danger. Right. So they took the record off, but they let him keep the other 14 songs on the album that talked about killing black youth. So this is what we're doing. We're not dealing with a circumstance or consequence of history. You know what I mean? The environment that we're embedded in puts us in a situation where we feel we have to maneuver and play the game and water our message down. You know what I mean? But no, what happened was they intentionally shifted the paradigm to get us exactly where we are right now. Right now, we're feeding the prison industrial complex right now. Our kids are going to prison because they're promoting these records. They're promoting these records daily that send us to jail. You know what I mean? It's cool to go to jail. You know what I mean? They glorify these things. And it's not the black youth. We're in a position where we get, like the brother said, the choice. You know, he said, yo, I chose the positive. So I didn't do it. But every youth is not going to take that route. I know I come from the projects. Grew up in the projects all my life. You know what I mean? And we're not turning down $500,000 to say nigga. We're not going to do it because we won't turn down 200 to take a package of crack from one corner to the next. You know what I mean? We live in a state of poverty and one of all things. So it's hard for us to make that. Our judgment is clouded. And they knew that the judgment would be even more clouded if they took groups like X-Clan off the radio. This is just what it is. And until we start to deal with the environment that's shaping the behavior, we'll never get to the next part.
So, what can we learn from this?
We should learn about the power of music. It can be negative or positive. Now, the interesting thing about the shift in the hip-hop message is that in Jamaica, we also had a similar shift from love songs and conscious songs to glorifying robbery and murder. It got so bad that it just relatively recently, the government had to impose a ban. Now, in terms of message, what can we learn? In terms from the hip-hop story, we also learned 3 important lessons. Number 1 is the extent that the system will go to destroy us. Number 2, we cannot rely on music to enforce positive messages of how to solve the problem of racism. 3, it's clear what the solution is. Organize and instill racial pride through our education system. We cannot rely on music to do this. The curriculum in our schools would include the great history of our ancestors. The brother mentioned that they were attending lectures by Dr. Yusuf Ben Yochanan during the time for inspiration. We could also add Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, who would have been great inspirational, could be inspirational as well because of the topic she covers, which is racism. And these people must continue to be among our teachers. You can find their work can be found on YouTube right now.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, there is also even a worse example of racism uncovered recently that we need to share.
Really? Do you think our audience is ready to hear something worse than what we have just shared?
Well, whether they're ready or not, we have to share it, or people need to develop a sense of urgency to find solutions to protect us against racism. So let's play the video.
Most of the developed nations have single-payer health care, so what that means is public health insurance, right? Now, some go beyond that, the UK does, et cetera, but we don't. Why did we diverge from everyone else? How did that happen?
It really began in the 1880s, 1890s, when medicine became a thing. And there was this guy named Frederick Ludwig Hoffmann who came over here from Germany. And he was a young man. He was 17, in fact, when he came over, and was a numbers genius. And he hooked up with the Prudential Life Insurance Company, ended up being a vice president. And he was the guy who figured out that there was an association, a statistical association between working in a cotton mill and having lung problems, asbestos and mesothelioma, smoking and lung cancer. He published on that in the 1910s, in the 1890s and 1910s, and diet and cancer. In fact, his book on the association between a high processed food diet and cancer is still in print. He's been dead since 1946, but his book is still around. So he's really smart in these things. And so he married this Southern belle from Georgia who was from a racist plantation family. And so he ran the numbers on black people and found that black people were dying, dropping like flies, more likely to be sick, more likely to die of pretty much everything. And concluded, which was the general consensus at the time among a lot of white people in the South, this is again in the 1890s, that black people were genetically inferior. And in 1896, he published a book called Race, Tendencies, and Traits of the American Negro, in which he lays out all the numbers, and then he concludes that if we simply avoided allowing black people to have any access to health care, that within 2 or 3 generations, the whole race would die out, and that would solve the race problem in America. Now, it sounds kind of crazy when I just lay it out like that right now, but this led to a whole bunch of things. By the 1920s, this was referred to as scientific racism. He was testifying about it before Congress. When Teddy Roosevelt, 1912, proposed a national healthcare system, people said no because black people will get it. When Franklin Roosevelt proposed a national healthcare system, it was the same thing. We don't want black people to get it. When Truman tried it in 47, same thing. Don't want black people to get it. Right up until 1965, Senator Stennis, the Dixiecrats in the South, was quoting Hoffman, who was by then dead, but is still very famous in this field, as saying this. We have to figure out a way to keep black people from using Medicare. This is when they were passing Medicare. And the way that they came up with was to have a 20% hole, a gap in Medicare, so that you had to pay 20% of your doctor's bill and your hospital bill. And that would discourage poor black people from showing up at the hospitals. I mean, it was the most shocking thing I discovered, Cenk, when I was doing the research on this book, is that nearly 100% of the reason why the United States is the only country in the world that doesn't define healthcare as a right and doesn't have any sort of national healthcare system to speak of is because of racism.
Any final thoughts on the video we have just seen?
Well, I recommend that our Black American audience listen to this carefully and realize the full extent of what they're up against. Read and digest the message written on the front of the video. It's potent. They should spread awareness and ultimately organize and teach racial pride. This can be accomplished by teaching future generation the great history of how we civilize the world. I recommend watching our two-part series about resisting psychological warfare that can be found on our channel. So that's it. Time is on us. So help the channel by subscribing, share, like the video, and leave a comment. And I will see you all next week.
And same from me. So until next time, do not forget to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Thank you.